The contents of this interview, or from Awake and Empowered Expo LLC from Ethann Fox and Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution, is for informational purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the viewpoints held by these organizations or individuals. Always consult with your doctor or health professional before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, or prescription drug use. Please understand that you assume all responsibility and risk for the use or misuse of this information.
I'd like to welcome you to Awake and Empowered Radio. This is Ethann Fox. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Michael Monk and Michael Grubb of the Avatar Energy Mastery Institute. Michael Monk and Michael Grubb are energy masters who teach the arts of telekinesis, healing, out-of-body travel, and many other metaphysical abilities. They are unique in that they are open to the critical eye of the public, offering demonstrations that they teach in order to show the mass consciousness, the interconnectivity of all things, of the true state of oneness that is the destiny of mankind. In today's conversation, we also discuss the future of human development, the role that food plays in our lives, and the reason why it's important to develop these higher abilities. Michael, thank you for joining me on the call today to talk about the incredible work that you're both doing out in the world. We're really looking forward to having you out here in person sometime in the near future to demonstrate some of these things in person. But today I'd like to get a little bit of background for our audience and to talk about your work and your history and how you both got to where you are now. First, welcome and thank you for taking the time to be here with me today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. I'd like to start out, if you can both tell me more about your life journey and how it led you to discover the abilities that you now teach to others to develop within themselves. And also, I find it really important to share any life-changing moments or experiences that impacted you personally, because I personally have had a lot of those things that have really redirected the course of my own experience, and I think those stories sometimes tell us more about a person than even their biographical story. So if you can, one at a time, just give me a little background about yourselves, that'd be great.
Sure, I'll go ahead and go first. And for the people listening, this is Michael Monk, so that you can gain a distinction between our voices. My journey was not an intentional one. I was in my early mid-20s and just watching a TV show, just a normal comedy movie, and all of a sudden, for no particular reason whatsoever, I felt a presence or an energy, though I didn't understand energy at the time, that came into my headspace. And it was accompanied by a telepathic voice. In other words, I could hear it as a thought, but I could also hear it in my physical eardrums, which was quite astonishing. And it asked me to stand up and turn the TV off. And when I did do that, of course, I was curious as to what was communicating with me. And I asked if it was my grandfather who had recently passed. So I said, "Grandfather, is that you?" And I got an energy rush through my whole system, very similar to the chills you get down your spine at a very intense moment in a movie. And the voice answered yes. And once again, I heard that both in my mind and in my physical eardrums. And then it communicated a feeling to me like there's something else, something more to it, or another presence there. So I asked if it was my cousin Jason, who had also recently passed on, and the voice said yes and gave me that incredibly good feeling, the energy chills. And I was confused at that point, so I said, "Okay, you're my cousin and you're my grandfather. I'm confused." And this intelligence, this energy, opened up my inner vision and showed me a vast heavenly host of humanoid formed light beings, looked just like us except they were in light form. And I perceived that they were all telepathically connected and speaking to me as one singular voice. At that moment I understood and perceived that I was talking to God, because I had no other way of understanding it. I was religiously brought up, and so I said, "Heavenly Father, this is amazing. Is this what it's like on the other side? We're all perfectly connected, and we all share thoughts and feelings." And the voice answered back, "Yes," with a lot of excitement, and said, "You have finally met me, and now I'll give you a space and time to ask any questions." So we dialogued for an hour or two that night, and obviously I was really excited, floored with adrenaline and excitement. By the end of the night, even though most of the questions I was asking were biblical in nature, because I really didn't have a different standpoint to come from, it kept leading me towards the nature of reality. Like, it kept steering me towards understanding things like vibration and such. And by the end of the night, after what I'd learned, I just sort of knew that if I was sitting in front of a wall, and I just had a hunch that if I looked at this wall in the right way, I could cause it to disappear based on what this being, this God or collective consciousness had shared with me. And it didn't happen or anything. I just was, pondering the logic of it. So I got on fire. Obviously I was very curious to pursue this further, so I began reading the Bible. Um, and mostly the New Testament about the life of Jesus and such. And this was when my first profound spiritual experience happened. I mean, well, that was profound in itself. But a couple weeks after that, I'd had a serious injury that I accidentally obtained to my left eyeball. I got stabbed with a very sharp object. I did it to myself in just a blundering accident when I was home alone. And it was a really bad wound. It was very apparent to me that I was either going to need some miraculous surgery or I was going to lose my eye. And when the fullness of that emotion hit, I got tears in my right eye, so now I was effectively blind and home alone. Next thing I know, I felt that presence in me and just knew, there's no other way to explain it, that if I prayed that I would receive aid. So I got down on my knees and prayed in the way that I knew how. The exact words I said was, "Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, let my eye be healed." And I got floored with intense energy and vibrations. And when I stood up and got off my knees and looked in the mirror, my left eye was completely healed, and there wasn't even any blood on my cheekbone anymore. And the tears in my right eye were gone, like transfigured. The odd thing was I had a thin stream of blood running down from my forehead, which I went to wipe off, and there was no wound, so no physical way of explaining how the blood got there on my forehead, like right from the center of my forehead. Really weird. So obviously that floored me. I was in shock, and not necessarily bliss, because it was just more shock. I didn't know how to handle it. Where do I go from now? Who can I tell about this? So on and so forth. So long story short, on that end, I spent about 8 years being somewhat of a private prayer warrior. Like, I kept trying to attend churches and have the information that they would give me about how everything works line up with what I had received from a direct communication from God, and it simply didn't. And I spent about 8 years in that run around, and during that time I had experienced a few other very intense miracles by praying, healings and weather changes, interventions, things like that. But it was the occasional thing. So it was about 8 years after that that I put all of that aside, because it really freaked people out when I would tell them about it, and it only served to alienate me from society. So I decided to just brush all that aside and be a good boy and work a job and just be a regular 3D person and fit into the world. And I had been doing that for about 2 years when all of a sudden I get a bug in me to start researching about 2012. And this was like in 2008. And so I did a Google internet search while I was at work. I was a car salesman at the time, so we have access to computers and some spare time when we don't have customers. And I caught on to some material. I'd heard about David Wilcock. That's where it first led me. And I kept hearing him reference this material called the Law of One. So I'm like, okay, if this guy's referencing material, then why am I listening to him? I'll just go read the book myself. So I did, and I found it to be fascinating, and not just the words, but that I started receiving that vibration. again, that chill up and down the spine that at the time I called the Holy Ghost because I still didn't understand energy. So here I was getting confirmations from the Holy Ghost that there was truth in this material, when obviously this material would be frowned upon by any church, and a couple hundred years ago would have gotten you burned at the stake. So that astonished me, and the material was very, very profound in that it logically describes how physical realities are created out of energy, that there's really no such thing as physical matter, that everything is waveform and vibration, but that our five senses are capable of interpreting these waveforms as physical matter. And it really sunk in. Like, you can read something and sort of understand it, but there's a difference when you read something and it fully clicks into your core. That's what happened here. And at the same point that the understanding happened, I got hit with a huge ton of energy, more than I had ever felt. And the voice of God came back into me, which had been silent for a very long time, and said, "Good, I want you to go outside now and get away from people." So I walk out back and into the back where we take in the trade-in vehicles. And as soon as I stopped walking, and I was away from people, the whole world around me started shifting and flowing and rippling in a multi-spectrum rainbow light, very much like heat looks when it's coming off of a blacktop, except it was everywhere and it was multicolored, rapidly fluctuating through the rainbow spectrum. Just beautiful beyond description to see and feel. Now, this was odd because it didn't shock me. I had a very deep knowing that I know this place, I know this state of consciousness, I've been here before. And not only that, but I knew what to do. And at the time I didn't know what a heart chakra was, but my knowingness of what to do was to begin to open up my chest, like literally just pry it open, like a mental motion of just cracking your chest wide open. And when I did that, my physical body began to vibrate in that same fluctuating rainbow rippling waveform pattern. And at that point I was astonished because I could see through my body to the pavement underneath me. I looked to the left and to the right at my arms, and I didn't even really have arms. I like had a tiny ghosted physical image of arms, but the primary thing that I was experiencing was my body actually being this rippling, fluctuating waveform light. So I got a little bit scared, and I had an ego-based thought of, what if I can't rematerialize my body? The instant I had that thought, I was slammed back into physicality, and into the perception of having a physical body, and my heart was beating like very rapidly, probably 120 beats per minute. Now at that point, this is when it all really started to begin to get interesting as far from a developmental level, because I had reached out to an old music instructor I had, who I sort of grasped that at least I thought that he was on the level and perhaps had been trying to teach me this stuff because he was into yoga. It turns out I freaked him out by telling him that, and he thought I was crazy, and so he called a friend of his, the only person that he thought could help me, and begged me to give this guy a call. And I did so, and the first thing the guy said to me was, "Well, you're not crazy. That's the first thing I need you to understand." He goes, "Look, I'm a Reiki master. What you're experiencing is energy. You're having very deep, very profound experiences, and I'm going to help you all I can to integrate them." So that was when that was a brand new notion to me, this whole idea of energy and consciousness, that we could work miraculous things with our own willpower, with our own system, our own soul, our own body, our own willpower. Before that, the only thing my mind had even touched on was that we could pray to God and receive very interesting miraculous interventions and whatnot. So that began my energy training, because I was obviously desperately wanting to get back into that waveform perception. I was always kicking myself that I got scared and cut off the experience, and really wanted to find the gateway back into that. And that it took about 2 years, and then one night in late 2009, towards the end, I was just vegging out. No other way to describe it. Vegging out, looking at an index card, when all of a sudden I began to perceive the rippling waveform energy again. And this time I had a lot more tools by which to understand it because I had read the Seth material. If you're familiar with the Seth books by Jane Roberts, most people are. Seth talks extensively about how we form the physical reality. And so I was prepared for this type of data stream, and I could see clearly with this clairvoyant perception that my arm was made of a thick light, like it did not appear physical to me anymore, a thick fluctuating light. The index card I was holding was also made of fluctuating light, but it was lighter than my hand. So it was obvious to my consciousness that my hand was forming the index card by the very act of holding it and observing it. And then all around the index card was an even lighter fluctuating energy going out. So it was very apparent to me that stemming from the consciousness of my body is a whole infinite range of energy that's coming out and going everywhere. And not only that, but I could perceive the energy signature of all sentient things. And by sentient, I mean more things are sentient than we would imagine. The walls are sentient. The physical objects we have, they have a type of sentience to them and their own energy signature. So after finding this gateway into clairvoyant energy perception, I just spent about a straight year, every single night, not socializing with anybody because I had a fantastic magical world to explore. I would just go very deep into the energy perception and play, and take notes, cross-examine, figure out how it all works, how it all flows together. And it wasn't too long until I made a very big breakthrough, whereas before I was playing with energy and perceiving energy. One night my consciousness just merged completely with the energy to where the exterior environment felt like my body, like our physical bodies do. I had gained a conscious presence inside of the energy and no longer viewed it as something separate from myself. I mean, I could feel things pass my body just as surely as I could feel my hands or my feet. And that's when it really started getting interesting because I noticed just through experimentation that I could move people around, like I could cause people to move by projecting my energy into their body. I could work through their nervous system and cause them to make involuntary muscle motions and things like that. And then it wasn't long after that till I discovered, well, by putting my conscious presence in the air and expanding and contracting, that I could generate wind flow. Or that by putting my hand in a still puddle of water and expanding into the electromagnetic spectrum, that I could cause it to ceaselessly ripple in a constant pattern, and that I could make the clouds disappear and change the weather somewhat. You know, all of these effects that are really a byproduct of having achieved unity consciousness. You know, if you feel something as being a part of your very being, your very body, then it's going to respond to you for the same reason as the hand flexes when you will it to. So after that, I stopped my job because I couldn't see myself doing that kind of work anymore. I'd cracked open some really big boundaries. I understood some stuff that nobody else seemed to understand at the time. From the people that I knew, and so I decided that I was just going to start offering teachings, and I started a Facebook account and started offering teachings to people and healings in exchange for a place to stay, room and board. And I traveled the country for about a year, met the partner that I'm currently with now. This was in 2011, and she suggested that I formalize my teachings and make a website and start an online energy school. And I took her advice and started doing radio interviews and formal YouTube demonstrations, sharing with people the proof of what I do, and put together the entire course. And that's pretty much as brief as possible of a summary as to how I got to to where I am now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for the detailed understanding. It gives me a really good idea of how you got here and some of those unique experiences that shaped who you are today. Michael Grubb, can you also answer that question?
Sure, I can. I'll try to make this as brief as possible, too. Um, as a child, I was always prone to it. I have no idea whether it's because of genetics, race, whatever. I'm Irish, British, African American, American Indian, so I've got quite a bit of a healthy mix there. And I was also brought up in the church as well. I was brought up African American Methodist Episcopal. So being part white and part black, I had a very interesting way that I grew up. And it wasn't necessarily during the time where it was cool to be part white and part black. So I went to an all-white school, all-black church. And so I was thrown into some things pretty quickly and early on, got to see kind of like the underbelly of human nature. And so that made me a very observant person. And I would have any number of types of experiences that were, you'd call quote unquote spiritual. I myself actually am not that spiritual of a person. I believe more or less in mathematics more than anything, to be quite honest. But I've had enough spiritual experiences to know that, in fact, I do have a soul that is animated and that actually drives the engine, which is my body here. And the thing is early on, I kind of had that understanding already. But I had had several experiences, so many of which it's hard kind of to pinpoint which ones to even share. But I had enough experiences with between the church and some of the things that would happen within the church to where I finally became disenchanted by the church itself, by religion. And this is a very early age. Keep in mind that I had already pretty much rejected what religion was pushing on me. And so I had any number of experiences, one of them of which was around 9 years old. I had a couple of actually very close to near-death experience too, which actually I think it amounted to a death experience. But we'll go ahead and start with the thing that happened when I was 9 years old. I had a operation. I'm not going to tell you what kind of operation, but I do know that I was given all sorts of stuff to put me down, all sorts of anesthetics and everything, and for whatever reason it wasn't working with my body type, and I think what they ended up doing was they put nitrous. They put some nitrous over me, and then I started breathing that in, and then what ended up happening was I literally started hearing all the nurses and doctors' voices go into what I heard as a computer tone. And of course, I'm 40 years old, so around 9 years old, there's no internet, there's nothing out there to relate my experience to. You know, there was maybe some video games and whatnot, but nothing to where I could, adequately describe to my parents, hey, I had this experience where I watched these grids, these light grids come through the entire room, and hearing these nurses and doctors go into computer tone voice. I just told them that I had a very scary experience. But the thing is at that particular time, I remember laying down and literally watching the room divide up mathematically. And at the same time, again, I'm listening and looking at the doctors. Their faces change. I can't even tell you what I remember that they changed, to be quite honest. The voices scared me more than anything. But later on in life, I would be able to look back on that because... And basically say, well, that was my first experience with what we term as the digital reality. There's a person out there right now, he works for CERN, his name is Sylvester James Gates Jr. They had been working with particle acceleration recently, and they had found the binary code. Well, and that's something, that everyone should look into. Again, his name is Sylvester James Gates Jr. He's a very brilliant man, and through particle acceleration, they discovered the binary code, which exists through this reality, making it, digital. So, like I said, later on in life, I'd be able to pinpoint this particular point as the first time that I actually had a direct experience with the interface that I call the Matrix. And it's funny because I remember watching the movie The Matrix much later on in life and just almost laughing because it seemed like it was an actual representation of a lot of what I get to live. Well, now, like I said, I had many experiences, some of them which were mathematics, some of them which were spiritual. So now we're going to go backwards to when I had a quote-unquote near-death experience, which again basically accounted to about the same thing, but it happened so quickly that, the memory that I have of it is more like a flash. But I had gotten pneumonia. My parents had to put me into, and I think I was about 5 years old, by the way. My parents had to put me into a bathtub and throw a whole bunch of ice in there, and I remember going out, and as my consciousness was going out again, I had an experience where I could see a bunch of gridded lines. I didn't hear much. I don't remember much even occurring. And just so you know, when I did go out, I don't remember any sort of a bright light. I don't remember anything like that. I just remember waking back up in the hospital after being revived. So, now, fast forwarding. Throughout my teenage years, I didn't have many experiences at all. It was through the onset of puberty and everything like that, and socialization. I gradually began to forget about certain things, and I wasn't honing anything. But as a child, I remember I would work really hard in having these experiences from the ones that I had. So that was enough. Those experiences I just told you about was enough to keep me very curious to try to develop more. But like I said, during teenage years, it kind of faded away. Well, during my 20s, then at that point, I again resumed meditating. I again resumed all the stuff that I had been doing before, except at this particular time of my life, I was also boxing, I was kickboxing, and I was training for several different things. And so I was primarily egoic at the time, very, very negative, very aggressive. And so I started meditating and developing what I would, the only thing that you could call it is mind control. I first started with working with animals, and then I started working with people. One of my most unfortunate guinea pigs was at that time my girlfriend at the time, and I had done a lot of stuff with her, like entering the dream state, being able to literally telepathically communicate back and forth with her. But after a while, she had even asked me to stop because she started realizing that, our minds were literally blending, okay? There was certain information that she wanted to be able to keep from me. Well, certain things escalated and escalated until finally I had a situation which a lot of these experiences are very hard for me to describe, but I will briefly say that with this experience that I had, and it very much felt multidimensional, it let me know the resonance of what I was doing. So I was going really towards the negative route during this period of my life. And, given the fact that not only was I involved in, several violent activities, not only was I, boxing, kickboxing, everything else, but I was also a bar bouncer and a few other things. So I had been honing, this really hard portion of myself, which was getting extremely strong, especially with my abilities. So, the abilities themselves started manifesting more powerfully. Of course, the more successes that I got, the more practice that I put into it, the better I got. Well, finally, once I realized that I was completely on the negative side of the path, I quit for a few years. So I'd say right around 26 or 27 years old, I decided to entirely stop doing anything that I was doing with meditation because I realized that I was not ready at that time to continue, and that I was developing the worst portions of myself as opposed to the best portions. So by the time I hit 30, it was like May 5th of 2004, I have an experience. I initially went out to meditate at this place called Leonard Springs, and I'm making a very long story short here. Something spooked me as I was getting ready to go into the woods to go meditate, and I decided to go back home. Well, I went home, and I ended up getting something to drink and went back behind my home there because there's a creek. I like to meditate next to water. And at Leonard Springs, they have spring waters that shoot out everywhere. Well, I replaced that with just by going to my backyard, basically. It's not really my backyard, but it's the area where I lived. So I went back there, and it's a place called Hines Road. It's in Bloomington, Indiana. And I saw what I thought was a security light sitting above a farmer's home. Well, I drove up to it. I got out of my car, and then the next thing that I knew, I mean, I was looking at this thing. Like I said, I thought it was pretty small from what I could tell. But this thing started moving, and as it moved, it had no sound. And so my mind at this point is scanning through anything that I could think of that it could be other than a UFO, because I was a very big disbeliever in UFOs at that time. Extremely, I was for whatever reason, just completely against the idea that they even existed here on this planet. I did believe that there were quote-unquote aliens, but if there were aliens, that they were, limited to their sphere, wherever they come from. Well, I ended up finding out the hard way that these things do, in fact, exist. This thing was not thousands of feet in the air. It was only a couple of 100 feet in the air, and I, by no means, had an accurate look at it when I was initially across the way looking at it. Like I said, I had to drive up to this area. Well, like I said, when this thing finally came over me, and I realized what it was, and it was massive, and like I said, probably about 200 feet in the air maximum. I tried to run back to my vehicle, which did not work. So, don't know whether whether it was out of fear that I froze up, or whether it was something that the UFO did that froze me up. But I do know that I experienced a lot of pulsing and jumping within my temple, and then right at the side of my neck, I felt a whole bunch of the only electricity, radiation, and it felt like that literally right next to my temple, that there was a buzzing sensation. It went down into my ear, and then it literally was making the nerves in my neck just pulse sporadically. So I was having all sorts of muscle spasms. And the next thing that happened, like I said, I was frozen. So for like 15 minutes, I remember the next thing that happened, a different set of lights turned on, and it shut off another set of lights. And when this happened, all the farm animals next to the area that I was at, they sounded like they were being murdered. Even though there was nothing wrong with them later on, next week when I had actually went back and talked to the farmer, there was nothing wrong with the animals, nothing bad had happened. But it literally sounded like they were being murdered. And then I remember another light coming on, and then all the animals stopped at the same time, and that's when I felt what I felt, the only way to describe it would be a download. I saw a million different things flashing through my head, and I could not focus on any singular thing. I heard many different sounds. A lot of it sounded like, I don't know, sped up gears. But at high pitch, really high pitch. And so, like I said, I was stuck there for like 15 minutes. When it was finished, I remember another set of lights coming on, and then another light coming on at the top of it, and then it started moving off. It moved off to a northeastern direction. At that point, I was already running back into my car. I got into my car and had literally peeled out, did a U-turn to go back to my house. By the time I got around the corner, I remember the UFO had gone over the set of trees, and it looked like it was descending. I can't tell you for sure whether it was or not, but I do know that a ton of white light spewed out from the top of that area. But by that point, I had already gotten back towards my house. And so I remember running into my house and locking the door, and then grabbing, at that time I used to have a firearm. I no longer have one, but I grabbed a firearm because for about 5 minutes, it made me feel better to hold it in my hand. But nonetheless, so at that point, I had told my girlfriend what had happened, my girlfriend at that time, and she didn't believe it. So she ended up distancing herself from me for a while, because this was something that I went through. So this situation wasn't anything that was just like an isolated incident. it was one of those things that it kind of followed me around for a little while because I allowed myself to really get absorbed in what occurred. So I was, literally trying to replay everything over and over and trying to understand what had occurred. Well, it was something that I thought that would never occur again, that it was just maybe a lucky thing. Well, May 12th of 2005, I had just started to get back to being a normal dude again and had, started a business and then completely forgotten about UFOs or anything else, and then it all kicked back in again. As a matter of fact, I've got tons of stuff on YouTube, not only videos, but I've also got videos of us going out, being circled by choppers, military choppers, and going out at all times of the night, or even sometimes during the day, and getting footage of UFOs. So during, I'd say, a 2-year period after May 12th of 2005, I was able to take friends out on a non-stop basis, and we would see something pretty crazy in the sky almost nightly. But like I said, it started attracting the attention of the military, so the military got involved for a little while. They even still, to this very day, I get footage of it quite a bit, will come and literally circle over the apartment complex that I'm at or wherever I'm at. It will happen quite frequently. So at that point, after I had this thing occur, okay, remember I said there was a download. The next thing that starts happening when I go out and I start meditating, I'm starting to get results that I was never getting before. If I would go out and meditate, all of a sudden the atmosphere would cool off, or there would be wind responses. A couple of times I remember just having fleeting thoughts like rain while I meditate, and it would literally just start raining. It took me a while to really attribute that to myself. It took me a while to go, okay, well, this is cause and this is the effect. So for a while, I had to deal with A, like I said, my girlfriend not believing, B, military stuff, C, all of a sudden my abilities are now starting to accelerate. Okay, and so towards the end of my living with my girlfriend at that time, we were together there for maybe about a year after all of that had occurred, and then we had finally, because she was worried, A, that one day either the military or something was going to come pick me up and then I would never come home again, and then B, we were also having side problems, but I can tell you that the clincher was definitely had a lot to do with what was going on with the military and everything else. Well, so my abilities begin to accelerate, and I'm starting to notice, like I said, all of these symptoms. Okay, so I would go out and I would meditate, and then the air would start to condense, or there would be rain. One time I had something really extreme happen, which was a tree literally bent around me. I ended up having a guy named Ted Robertson who worked for MUFON at that time. They came out and did some tests and everything. They found that there were traces of radiation and everything. Another guy named Lynn Taylor, who also, I think he worked for MUFON for a little bit, he came over and had taken some samples and whatnot, and I think the most samples that he had found, for some reason, was in my bathroom, but I did do a lot of meditation in my bathroom, usually in the bathtub, and so I would do a lot of meditation, maybe about an hour or so at night in the bathtub, and where they said they found, I can't remember what kind of crystals, but it was consistent with quote-unquote paranormal activity. So anyway, once I start getting really good and I start really developing my abilities, I start trying to teach people. I ended up getting my first apprentice, I think it was about, now it would have been about 7 years ago, and 6 or 7 years ago. And a lot of interesting things happened with them. I learned a lot about myself and about teaching. One of the things that I did learn during the teaching process was definitely not to move people along quicker than what they are ready for. Because this ended up, being that it was my first student, I wasn't trained very well on people's mental thresholds. And so what is acceptable for some can drive other people crazy. In fact, I've had at least 3 other people in my life who also had very similar situations that ended up not being able to handle it so well mentally, and then were either put away or they ended up committing suicide because they were unable to handle all the stimulation and everything that this entails. So it's one of those things that it can be very daunting, but at the same time, it's kind of like the universal hazing. You make it through, and then you learn a lot about yourself. And so once I really started learning about myself, I was able to teach it very effectively. But at the same time, like I said, my first apprentice, I moved him along too quick. He ended up getting a God complex, which ended up costing him dearly out here. But from that point, I just resumed teaching here in Bloomington for a while, and then I started posting a bunch of videos up. And that started really getting certain types of attention. As a matter of fact, this is how Michael Monk and I met. Was through the process of him just checking out, I guess, YouTube videos, or it was his students that were checking out the videos, and then eventually brought him to me, or me to him, however you want to look at it. But from that point forward, we just kind of started working together, and now we're doing this. So that's kind of the story. I wanted to make it brief, but I didn't want to add too much to it because it could take a while.
That's okay. No, I appreciate the detail, and I'm sure a lot of other people will as well. You both went into this a little bit or touched on it, but I want to have you respond with any more details to this. But I would like to know, what was it like for both of you to live in the world and suddenly come into these abilities while you're still living in the world? I'm asking because there's a mass awakening happening in the world that I'm very much immersed in myself, and
Sure.
I'm constantly hearing stories of people having these kinds of awakening experiences and most often they feel out of place in their world and among their friends and family, and don't really know how to make that transition. So I'd like to know from both of you, what was your experience of going through this transition, and how did you deal with that and come to where you are now?
Well, it's certainly a challenge, and from a social standpoint, at least for me, I only take enjoyment from socializing with spiritual, energetic people that are on the level. I can no longer even take the slightest joy in talking about 3D materialistic day-to-day things. But as far as the ability to interact on a normal level with people when you want to, that's really no problem. It can be a problem if a person is spiritually activated in an isolated situation where they don't have the tools to build a logical framework around their knowledge and around their experiences. That can oftentimes result in temporary insanity, like you get a God complex, or you start believing you're an archangel from the ninth dimension, or you go off on some tangent and then start presenting that tangent to other people, and it doesn't go over so well. But as long as you have a logical framework, which is a big part of what we provide in our training, a logical, grounded, practical, metaphysical, scientific, and physical understanding of everything we do, then it really doesn't harm your ability at all to interact with society, and the abilities actually increase it because your senses get driven up. A big part of the training is expanding the range of the five senses, so you learn to see above and below the range that the eyeballs are fixed on, hear above and below what the eardrums are geared to perceive, and same thing with the sense of touch. So the amount of data that you have access to is quite a bit more than your average person, so you actually have a lot more logical data to work with for your interactions with people. So it can actually be quite a bit of a plus, but we can never stress enough that it is important to keep your logical centers intact while you turn on all of these energy switches and everything. But as far as taking pleasure from hanging out with somebody and talking about their last weekend home improvement project, I mean, I just straight up can't do that anymore. I mean, some people can, all the more power to them. How about you, Michael?
Well, initially, my transition was kind of difficult because I was trying to deal with in between, like I said, the idea that the military was there, because at first you're sitting there going, "What is this all about?" Um, then the fact at that time that my girlfriend was a disbeliever until, of course, she had her own experiences there at that particular point, which kind of changed things around for a little while. But my family was very, very standoffish when it came to this sort of thing, including my brother for quite some time. Now my brother, he's doing this now, but the initial transition was rocky because I had to try to decide and figure out what it was that occurred. I'm sitting here trying to still go to a 9 to 5 job essentially and fit in and then come back. But now at this particular point, now that certain things got mastered and certain, things, a lot of people will really grip towards the fantastic. Like Mike said, a lot of people will, even, let's just say, even if you were an archangel, what's the point of going around telling everyone? The fact of the matter is that people are very, especially when it comes to society, they're very attuned to the collective consciousness, which says there are certain things, and I'm talking about the collective consciousness, which is the mainstream collective consciousness, which is you got to maintain a normal appearance, you've got to think in a logical platform. And so for a while, the transition was difficult, but at this particular point of the game, I take everyone for who they are, and if it takes, I guess, having to sit and talk about the latest home improvement thing, I'll tolerate it and sit and just to be with a person, another divine person, and be in their presence. But yeah, it's a very difficult thing when you see that their consciousness has not been activated in any sort of palatable way yet, which would attune them towards, evolution. So, I would say now at this particular point, no hangups whatsoever. When it first started, it was absolutely brutal.
Oh yeah, and on that end, it was brutal for me too. I mean,
Yeah,
coming straight out and telling people. I mean, I lost a lot of close friends. I was very alienated from my family. I had to spend time in a mental hospital just to
yeah,
alleviate their fears. And even though I was shortly after, released because they could only discern that I was an intelligent person with no issues except maybe bizarre experiences, but I thought the nature of your question was more like, what's it like for other people, and if they have
oh yeah,
assistance from someone like me or Michael or another teacher that's really been through these things and can provide a logical platform for them
yep,
to progress upon, then no problem whatsoever. But if you're in isolated situation and God comes knocking at your door, it can definitely turn
exactly.
your 3D life upside down for a while until you get grounded.
Yeah, it depends. It really does depend on the person. 'Cause like I said, there were some people. I know that John never made it back from it. There's a friend of mine in particular. I talk about him a lot during these interviews, but I think he deserves that. And you can look him up. His name is John Tosti. He had plenty of multiple UFO experiences, and he was also starting to experience, abilities. So he and I spent a good amount of time together. But some people don't make it out of this. Some people they'll hook their brain into one little aspect of it all, and then forget that they still have to live. Forget that they still have people out there that love them. And so sometimes it depends on really the mastery of that person and what their thresholds are. Some people are going to be able to handle this very well, and other people, if they don't have a support system around them, like Mike said, they don't have a support group or someone that they can speak to that will keep things in a logical platform for them. It'll send their minds in any sort of different directions, and that's the thing. It's like we all have to remember that every single one of us are amazing. Every single one of us are still human. Every one of us make mistakes. And if I'm the Son of God, then that inherently means that the person sitting across from me is also the Son of God. So what we're trying to teach is unity, and that there is no one more special than anyone else, and that we all have these abilities. And so there's ways that train. We've got good set parameters for training that will get you results. And so that is our whole thing, is that there is no one out there more special than the next, and that we all can really tap into this amazing thing that's occurring in the universe.
I want to go back to something you guys said a minute ago or a little while ago, and also you mentioned some of your background, and you both seem to have come from fairly ordinary backgrounds before these changes occurred in your lives. And
Sure.
and so now you're living, and you were living in a world at that time, working normal jobs, making money. Would you say you no longer care about money or material things, or what place does that have in your life experience now?
I care about having enough to be comfortable. You know, you need a roof over your head. You need a car these days. You need an internet connection. You need a computer. There's a few basics to where we definitely still feel a need for, but beyond that, there's really not too much. Like the other month, I did a seminar in Germany, a learning seminar, and I came out $1,200 ahead. I thought I was just going to break even, and I could not think of one single thing to do with that money that would make me happy in any way, shape, or form. So I bought my partner's son a new entertainment system, because I couldn't think of one single thing that I could spend it on for myself. So, I mean, as energy masters with an expanded consciousness and a unity consciousness, the natural world holds far more wonder than any of these mechanics, because you got to figure what we teach, what we spread, what we do is we are merging our consciousness into the electromagnetic spectrum. We feel things beyond the skin of the body being a part of ourselves. So we feel sunlight vibrating in the air. We feel it in our body. We feel the wind blow, not just where it touches our skin, but from 10 feet away. I feel the atoms and the molecules buzzing around in this chair that I'm sitting on. The breath and the heartbeat. These are two basic mechanisms, but to a person with expanded consciousness, each breath and heartbeat pushes your soul in and out of your body in a fantastical toroidal field pattern. So there's so much more available to us in terms of pleasure by practicing doing energy and merging with the natural world with consciousness than technology could ever hold. But as far as basic physical comforts, yeah, sure, we still need money.
Well, if the system wasn't like set up the way it is, there's many ways that we can live in a more simplistic manner. But at the same time, number one, now in this day and age, especially for what me and Mike are doing, almost all of our student base is dependent upon us being on the internet. And yes, we do get to go places, but again, and teach. But again, most of the stuff that we set up is done through the internet, phones, or whatnot. So there's certain amounts of technology that we need to be able to do what we do. And given that I do a lot of video work, so there's, I need a computer. I definitely need certain types of software. I'm a drummer, so there's drums. But all in all, I'm very simplistic in my needs. I actually only eat maybe once every 2 days. Sometimes it's a little more than that, sometimes a little less, but usually that's the average. I don't spend a lot of money because I don't have a lot of things that I want to spend my money on. And unfortunately, bills and everything else take up about the majority of it. So, as long as I can be comfortable doing what I'm doing and going from place to place, then I'm fine. I don't make a lot of money. I don't ask for a lot of money. I definitely live in the most humble manner that I can possibly live. So I think ultimately one day when people can really get out of the hierarchical way of doing things, then we will be more or less educated towards what we want to do with our lives as opposed to what we have to do to survive. And so I think that's going to be the next approach at some point once everything folds inward, is that we're going to be training people according to their talents as opposed to according to what there is to be fulfilled out there. A lot of people take jobs that they don't like just to survive. So Mike and I are very fortunate, and I'm sure you are too, to be able to do what you want to be able to do and still make a living doing it.
Yes, I would tend to agree with what your viewpoint on this, and I find a lot of people who are part of this movement and on the forefront, like you guys are, also share the same viewpoint in regard to the role that money plays in their life.
That's right.
Now, you mentioned, I wasn't planning on going in this direction, but you mentioned that you only eat every 2 days. Did I hear that correctly?
Yep.
Okay, so have you always eaten that little? And when you eat, I'm also curious from both of you, do you both eat very little? And are these big meals, and how does drinking play into your lifestyle as well? Do you also drink very little?
I definitely intake a lot more water than I would intake food. I've been doing this sort of thing for the past 10 years. The first 5 years of it, though, was because I was just outright poor and really couldn't afford much more than that. But my body got tuned to that. And so, like I said, sometimes there will be times where I will exceed that, but it's rare. And it's the same thing with the amount of sleep that I get. I get maybe about 4 hours on average per night, unless, of course, I've been deprived for a good long time, and then I'll have a period where maybe I'll take a week to catch back up. But that's the way my energy system works. It takes very little for me to very little input for me to have a ton of output. So I do a lot of absorption of energy from the sun. I'd say that's primarily what keeps me going. I've got a video that shows how connected I am to the sun. At some point, that would be a great thing for people if they get a chance to go through the YouTube channel. They'll be able to see some of those things called solar connections. But I've got a very good, strong solar connection, so a lot of my energy is just derived literally from the ether, from the cosmos, from solar weather. Now, in terms of Mike, I couldn't tell you for sure. I'm not for sure what his habits are.
Yeah, I've done extended fasts. The longest I've gone is like 16 days without food and drinking water, of course. I find I'm attracted to eating. I really like to eat, so I look forward to it. However, because my energy is activated in this way, if I eat any more than 600 calories in a day, I gain weight. So I've got to like eat these tiny portions and zero carbs. I can't have rice, bread, potatoes, nothing like that. It's got to be like fruits and vegetables, or if I eat meat, organic, free range, and very small portions. So I do eat, 3 times a day, but about no more than 600 calories, or I'm regretting it when I look in the mirror.
Yeah, I actually used to sun gaze for like 2.5 years, a couple hours a day, a while back, and I've never had much of an affinity for food either. And in more recent times, I find that I eat very little, and I think if I had no food available to where I didn't have the ability to eat, I could probably be fine. It's just I don't.
Yeah.
But there's still that slight psychological attachment. Although I find
Yeah.
that I don't tend to eat very much at all. Now, for Michael Monk, do you find that? See, I find a lot of people who are on a on a consciousness path or spiritual journey, eventually give up eating meat, not because of I mean, some do it for philosophical reasons. I'm not speaking about those people, but the ones who just all of a sudden, it's not that they give up meat, but meat sort of gives them up. Do you find that meat is in any way connected to consciousness, and is there a reason why you still feel like you need to eat that, or just anything you can say about that?
I like good quality meat. I like the taste of it. When you're initially starting out with energy work, the types of foods you eat can really be crucial, can really affect you in various degrees. You see, with all of this, it's all based on beliefs, okay? But there's two things to understand here. There's two different levels of beliefs. There's mental beliefs, and then there's physical or body beliefs. So our body has a rigid belief structure that was prefabricated before our souls, formed it. There's a pre-agreed upon pattern of beliefs that this whole reality is formed from. So that's half of the equation, is the scientific data as to whether something is good for you or bad for you. The other half of the equation is willpower. And willpower, beliefs, electromagnetism, your own ability to transmute. And it's no preset amount. So the stronger your willpower, the stronger your energy, the less whatever types of foods that you eat would affect you. The less your willpower, the weaker your energy, well, you better pay attention and be on a rigid diet. I do notice an effect if I consume flesh from an animal that was abused or treated horribly or raised in a factory, things like that. So when I do eat meat, it's wild salmon, or I pay double for the humanely raised beef or chicken. But I don't get, it doesn't have a tremendous impact on me. Even if I wanted to eat total junk crap, it would not impact me that great, because I'm primarily energetic and willpower based.
Now, do you think that animals, from your vantage point, have a soul? And if they do have a soul, what is the level of consciousness of that soul when compared to human beings?
Sure.
And if that's true, are we exerting our will against theirs by taking their life to eat meat, for example?
Well, for one, they do have souls. That's
Yep.
for sure. I'm a multidimensional being, so I can go to different spheres of consciousness, and from what I've seen, each race of animals has their own sphere of collective consciousness. So they're not dependent on us for their continued reality at all. They have their own private spirit-based or energy-based realms of consciousness. Now, that's an interesting point that you bring up. From all of my spiritual development, I have seen through and through that there is no such thing as a negative experience. That any so-called negative experiences that you go through end up amplifying the magnitude of the love and the light properties of your soul. So, yeah, it sucks to go through them in the moment. No, I would never torture a being on purpose in order to help them grow their soul, but I'm sure that there's no regrets on the behalf of the animal souls for any abuse that they've gone through with us. But we're at a time period where, as humanity, as the whole Earth collective sphere, we've grown enough. Okay, we've had enough awful experiences in every single lifetime to where our souls, the level of magnetism, the level of love we have, our level of vibrational power, the amount of light we have, is tremendous from all of the suffering that we've gone through, from all the suffering that the animals have gone through, from all the suffering that the planet's gone through. So we're all tired. Everybody wants to reconnect to soul. Let's reap the fruits of our labor and move on to the next step. So, you know, I do believe it's time that we start treating the animals better and everything, but there's nothing wrong with death. Death is a part of life. It's what allows a being to shift from one form to the other. And I know we get attached. We love an animal or we love a plant. We don't ever want it to die. Well, that's causing it to stay in one form for too long. And another thing is there's a limited amount of space on Earth, and it's a very popular place to incarnate. You've probably heard that through other channels, and if you haven't, it's because of the amount of growth that takes place here. Now, you got to consider, if we did not eat meat, there are so many animals that never even would have gotten a taste of Earth life at all if we didn't desire to eat their meat. So ultimately, there's really no such thing as a negative experience. With true hindsight, everything is a positive experience. So I do believe it's time we smooth out, reap the fruits of our labors reconnect to soul and bring all things back into harmony because we've grown enough from the suffering, but at the same time, no regrets.
One of the most important things that we could ever do as a species, period, okay, is a lot of people, want to put the idea of, I've watched vegans literally tear into vegetarians because the vegans believe that the vegetarians aren't stout enough in their beliefs to go completely non-animal byproduct. And I watch vegetarians jump down the throats of meat eaters, and remember that we all have canine teeth. The thing is what we should be striving to do is give back more to our sphere than what we are consuming, regardless of what we are consuming. So whether it be plants, animals, and everything, if you kill an animal, okay, the thing is what we're doing is we're slaughtering them in mass so we can wholesale sell them, okay? If you're going to have, the nerve to eat meat, you probably should hunt it. But you also got to kind of remember this, that it's most important because we're not only killing so many animal species, we're literally deforesting everything. I see it so much even here in Bloomington, Indiana. We're taking far more than we're giving back. If you're going to chop down one tree, you should be planting two. And that's the thing, is that we've lost any sort of idea to how to tend to our environment. Things have gotten so bad to the point we've got our oceans that are radiated now, just irradiated. And no one did anything about that. We've got gallons of oil, or billions upon billions of gallons of oil that have been spilled over the past few years. No one does anything about it. I remember the last BP oil special was them putting a whole bunch of paper towels over the area. That was their fix, their grand fix. So what we're doing is we're taking away all the resources. 3% of the world's population, America, takes away almost all the resources for the rest of the population. And the fact of the matter is that the balance has gone awry. So we as people need to remember to give back, to be a benefactor, to give back more to our environment than we take. I remember reading something about this one guy. I don't remember if it was in the Philippines, India, or whatever, but over a period of 20 years, he planted an entire forest, planted an entire rainforest, which ended up giving all this sustenance to life and everything around it. Well, that's one guy. That's one guy who did that. Now imagine if everyone were to give back just a little bit, okay? And the thing is to give back more than what you're taking. So, there's plenty of times where me, Kyle, and Daniel Atlas here in Bloomington, Indiana, we will literally go out and just pick up litter. We'll find areas that are completely littered and pick it up. And I even tell them, I'm like, what we're doing here may be just the litter. We've littered over the period of years upon years upon years ourselves. We may just be picking up our own weight and litter. But someone's got to do it. So the thing is give back more than what you're taking. And remember that the earth around you is being also sustained and projected by you. So that's the reason why you do have a responsibility for your environment, especially as a consumer.
Well, to reiterate what you both seem to be saying, it sounds like it's our intention in what we do that makes eating animals or plants one way or another, not to use the word improperly, but good or bad.
That's right.
And that animals and plants incarnate into this reality knowing that this is their purpose to, in the cases where they are eaten, to fulfill that purpose. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, and they also know that they're going to take from other life to fulfill their own life.
That's right.
What's not understood, because it's not a common trait yet of humanity to be able to project consciousness out of the body, but if you uproot a plant, what it feels is very, very, very similar to a human being strangled to death.
That's right.
So death supports life on this planet. It's just how it is at the moment. But be responsible, be reverent, be respectful. Like the natives were, the way they treated the animals when they would make a kill, and be thankful for the vegetables as you eat them. Acknowledge the consciousness And remember that how you choose to feel about it is of critical importance to your own health.
That's
'Cause
right.
I don't know if you're familiar with Cleve Baxter. Have you either of you heard of him?
No,
no.
I don't think I have.
Okay, he's I believe I can't remember if he was with the FBI or CIA years ago. I want to say FBI, but he was a an expert in lie detection, and he used lie detectors to basically test people for this agency. And after he retired, he got curious about plants, and he became known for his plant experiments later on, where he would attach lie detectors on plants and conduct different kinds of experiments. And to give you an example, he had lie detectors attached to plants, and then he would take a match and to burn one of the leaves on another plant, and the plant that was attached to the lie detector reacted, including the plant that was about to be burned. And then it reacted violently, like it was going into a state of fear. And then he did a further experiment where he simply had the thought in his mind, but he hadn't actually burned the leaf at that point, and the plant reacted to the thought that he had of doing that. Later on in his experiment, he had they had different kinds of produce, like like cauliflower. I want to say, I think it's broccoli or something like that, and so they were tearing apart this broccoli in preparation to eat it, and the plants reacted very violently to this. But what happened was, as another experiment, they said a prayer to the plants before they were being prepared to be eaten. And when they did that prayer, they no longer reacted to this treatment and this preparation for to be eaten. So he concluded from that the plants somehow either accepted their fate, that this is what they were intended for, and so they no longer reacted stressfully. So praying to the food that we eat does seem to create some sort of a shift in their consciousness.
Yes.
You both talked about how death leads to life, and how we, in order for us to live, we consume plants or animals, and that's how we sustain our own lives, and animals do that to each other as well. Where are we going long term? I mean, if we're eating less, I mean, in the case of the three of us, we're not as dependent on food as the mainstream. Do you foresee a future where people will not have to eat anything at all? And so
Yeah.
why does
Well,
so does this understanding that death leads a life only apply in our current level of consciousness? Or, I mean, what can you say about that?
I have a slightly different opinion than Mike. I mean, I don't think so, because from all that I've seen in all of my travels, we've got 5 different ways in which we're capable of interpreting vibrations, and taste is one of them. There is no sixth sense. The sixth sense is an extended range of the 5 senses, or an overlap of those. So I can't see any logical reason to give up one of the only 5 ways we have of interpreting vibrations. But I do see in the near future that once science merges with spiritual understanding, with energy understanding, and quantum understanding, and understands the type of stuff we do, and can then apply technology to it, that there's absolutely no reason why we can't just have molecular replicators that could make any dish perfectly that we would want to eat. Michael, go ahead and share your
well,
side of that.
I was just going to say that there is actually a man, I think he is maybe in India. I can find that video, but he's
Oh
actually
yeah.
gone, yeah, he's gone about 40 years without eating, period. And he's done it completely. He claims that what he's doing is he's meditating, and he's using the energy off the sunlight and the resonant frequencies of the earth. And I do believe that we could actually evolve into that. But I will. That being said, I do agree with Mike as well, is that we have taste is one of the ways that we interpret vibrations here. And so, me myself, even if I could go 100% completely on sunlight, there's still a portion of me that does want to still taste things and does want to still experience that. But I do believe that in the future, if people really go towards their evolution, it'll become a choice to eat
Yeah.
as opposed to something that is necessary, which is attached to the fight or flight program of survival, that it won't be such a massive thing for us as it is now.
So it sounds like with the connection of the evolution of consciousness and the world as a whole, we will at some point reach a point where we can eat or not eat, but where death is not associated with that eating.
Yeah.
That's what I believe, yes. We would need science to merge with spirituality so that we could have technical amplification of what we already do. I mean, what we already do is amazing in the sense of connection, and that's the true miracle of what me and Michael do, what we teach, what we demonstrate, and we want to make that clear. It's not for the purpose of showing people what we can do ability-wise. It's to show people clear first-hand knowledge possible to be in unity consciousness with the world. That it's possible to feel the world as an extension of your very body, to feel your fellow man as another self of yours, in conscious overlap with everything. The amount of power that any one of us individuals have is slight. We can make weather changes. We can cause clouds to disperse or form in the sky. We can make the wind change directions. We can alter cellular patterns in people's bodies and enact healings. We can change temperatures. I mean, these are moderate things, but you got to ask the question, well, what could we do if science grabbed hold of this, understood the mechanisms, and started building resonance amplifiers? What could we do if we all overlap fields? What could 100 of us do, all holding hands with our souls overlapped as a collective consciousness? So there are ways of accessing ample power to perform some very advanced feats of consciousness, and I do believe we're going to be tapping into those areas in the future. However, first we've got to break this hurdle, because people are still astonished to hear about the things that we're doing, and that should just be secondhand knowledge by now. It should be something that every second grader knows, that they can change the shape of clouds, and hear their friends' thoughts. I mean, we need to quickly get to a level where we accept the sensory level data of unity consciousness, and even science has already proved the omnipresence of every individual with quantum mechanics, states that an object is only in one space and time because it's being observed. Well, same thing is true with our bodies. How do we observe our bodies? By feeling them. Everybody is everywhere. Every plant is everywhere. So I was saying, you have a mind in your heart, you have a heart in your mind, you have your heart in the sun, you have a sun in the heart, you have your toes in the earth, you have fingers in the wind. When you begin to think quantumly, you can understand that all consciousness is in overlap. Every one of these objects that our brain paints this beautiful picture of separateness to is really in a quantum flux field of perfect overlap, and that can be experienced on a sensory level. And so we've got the mathematics to prove it. We're now offering demonstrations that are mind-blowing to some people. It's just pretty standard stuff to us, just demonstrating that we have a conscious presence past the skin of our bodies. But we want that to become common knowledge within the next 5 or 10 years, if we're even going to consider moving into advanced levels of higher consciousness living.
Our expo and organization tries to bring credibility to the various alternative fields of study that are, I believe, in a period of spiritual renaissance or breakthroughs in the world right now. Now, along those lines, can you both tell me about some of the experiments you've done that are in more controlled environments that would convince even a more rationally minded or mainstream minded person?
Well, what I've been working on a lot lately is changing temperature. So I can alter the temperature of any part of my body by at least a few degrees, sometimes by as much as 10 or 20 degrees. That's an astonishing enough demonstration right there, because a person isn't supposed to have a conscious control over their body temperature, and they're certainly not supposed to be able to heat it past dangerously feverish levels and not experience any side effect. I also have the ability to project consciousness into the air and alter the temperatures somewhat in the air. Part apart from that, I have the ability with you get me in person with anybody, I can just electromagnetically connect with them, show them their soul, and just take them right into this experience. And then, it's once a person has 5 sense data confirming within their own experience that they're connected, that's a pretty hard thing to ignore. And see, the energy we work with is subtle, so it can be measured. It is real energy. We work with electromagnetic energy. We have a device, an EMF meter, that registers our energy field. It shows that we have a presence past the skin of the body. It's a subtle energy that we work with, though. It's not a type of energy that humanity's used to with electricity, bombs, things like that. The energy we work with is more involved with communication. So we expand past our body, into the air, into the atmosphere, and we communicate through that subtle energy with the molecular structures, and we get a response from them. But that's pretty much what I do as far as offering scientific level, control level experiments. I can move light objects every time, but science would say it's static energy, and you know what? They're right. It is, because that's what happens when what we're accessing is causal reality, and that is pure vibrational energy before it even enters into the physical system. By the time it enters into the physical system and becomes measurable, then it's always going to have something physical that they can ascribe it to. If you've watched even Stanley's Superhumans lately, there's people on there with demonstrating outrageous skills, and there's always a scientific explanation for it. So, yeah, there's things that we can demonstrate that can show people that we have a definite effect on things past the skin of our body. But if a person is going to seek a very hardcore, desirous to be skeptical route, there's science is always going to be able to come up with a way of taking all consciousness out of the equation and labeling it as chemistry. But we can definitely demonstrate some things.
As far as anything controlled that I've done, I've definitely got the straw thing in the container, which was, in my personal opinion, done quite well. In terms of, submitting myself to science, no, I've not done anything like that. But then again, I look at things like this. When we throw out the term controlled experiments, the thing is whose controls are we submitting to? Okay? Because I hear that term a lot. But if you come outside and you hang out with me, and I do what I do, to me, that is my controlled environment. Someone who can actually interact with the elements at any time or at any given sort of weather anomaly or any sort of weather that is occurring, just to be able to go out there and interact one way or the next, and then pretty much be able to effectively prove that certain things wouldn't be occurring unless this person was doing it. To me, that shows more control than working within someone else's idea of what a controlled environment would be. Because, shoot, I mean, even for basketball, I could set up a bunch of controls. Okay, I could set up a controlled environment and be like, okay, let's see how good LeBron James really is. Is he really better than the average player? There's all sorts of things that you could set up and then just literally take away from a person. You got to understand too that we're living in a day and age where science is literally doing its best to suppress certain things. And we know that there's free energy out there. Free energy has existed since Tesla perfected it. Yet we have mainstream science, and we also have plenty of people who have worked within the peer-reviewed societies that will still claim that it does not exist. So when someone asks me to submit to controlled experiments, I always have to ask, whose controls are they? If it's set up specifically to prove you wrong, because I've seen a lot of like Rand experiments, or Randy, that's his name. I've seen a lot of those experiments which are geared specifically towards the individual not being able to do anything. Okay, if a person says, "Hey, my specialty is working outdoors and they want to intentionally put the person indoors. It doesn't make sense. Okay? So if I'm trying to prove that I have a connection with nature, does it make a lot of sense to put me into a closed room where nature is no longer, where I have no more connection with that nature itself? So these are the things that we have to think about when we talk about controlled experiments.
So you mentioned the straw experiment, and I saw the straw experiment online, and I've seen a lot of other people attempt straw experiments like that, or other similar experiments that were not nearly as convincing as the one that I saw you guys do.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering, what exactly are you doing, or thinking, or feeling? What is the experience that you're going through that's causing that straw to spin around?
Well, we have a magnetic presence. So the magnetism sensations are related to the sense of touch. So just like if you brush your skin, your one hand against another, you can feel that friction. Well, when we expand the range of our sense of touch by running focus energy through the nerve fibers, we gain a mental presence in the electromagnetic spectrum for the same reason as we have one within the nerve fibers. The nerve fibers are an electromagnetic presence. So we've already got physical proof that our consciousness exists in the electromagnetic spectrum, except that it's stuck in the circuitry of the neuron structure and the nerve fiber system. So we gain a sense of touch connection by running an amplified current through our nerve fibers to where we have a conscious presence outside of the skin of the body, except it's not the same type of sense of touch as the skin is. It's more of a magnetic, so it's particle based. So we're able to feel a density of vibrating particles with a sense of touch past the skin of our body. Once that's achieved, we can feel our hand, which is projecting the energy. And that has a magnetic signature, the flesh of our body. We can feel the air as a part of ourself, and that has its own unique magnetic signature and a collision of particles going on, friction. Then we feel the container, be it plastic or glass, and that has its own unique magnetic signature. Then the air inside of the container, and then the straw itself, all is one big symphony of variants of magnetic structure that our consciousness is all a part of. And then to generate movement on the straw, we flex the same part of mind that would be associated with expanding or contracting the hand, except we don't diffuse that energy through our nerve fiber system and into the muscles. We instead send that energy out into the electromagnetic field and then expand or contract the magnetic signature of the particles that we're merged with, and then that creates enough physical level energy in the form of static magnetism to actually get the straw to begin to move.
I've seen you on video making clouds disappear, and several members of our team here have also done this successfully now. And so when you do this, also, what is the experience like for you? And I'd also like you to respond to, I mean, the straw experiment is pretty definitive, I think, because you've got it in a sealed container, and it's obviously not being interacted by wind or anything like that. But how do you respond to someone who may be of a more mainstream mindset, who thinks that it's just a coincidence that you happen to make a cloud disappear? Can you explain the phenomenon and in a way that would make sense to someone?
Sure. Now, we're used to perceiving the five senses as just pure receptor mechanisms. When you begin to access this type of energy, you see that they're actually projector mechanisms. So we can use the eyes to actually project a conscious presence through them. And if you want to understand this scientifically, well, there has to be a constant electrical charge going through your nerve fibers, through your optic nerves, in order for you to see, right? So even though that's a very extremely minute amount of current, it's still current. So even scientifically understanding, you can understand that we have energy coming out of our eyes. And even if that energy is very slight, it involves communication, which is something science discounts. Once you can gain a conscious presence by projecting your mind through the nerve fiber system and out the eyes, you can begin to communicate with the surrounding molecular structures. So what we do with the cloud bursting is we project our consciousness through our eyes and focus it into a globe of energy, and then we merge that energy with the cloud and we feel it as a part of ourself. In other words, our whole five sense range is connected to it. We have a sense of sight connection, we have a hearing connection, we a smell. You can smell the cloud as though your face is just buried in fog. It's amazing to feel, by the way. We can feel the moisture of the cloud all in our skin as like an etheric echo. So we have a oneness with the cloud that's just amazing beyond belief to feel. And so at that point, if we want to disperse it, we just begin running a repelling energy field, just like the sun does, an outward blast of energy, and that causes the sun to begin to disperse. I mean, there's many different techniques that you can actually employ here, because you're dealing with oneness. So the cloud is within you, and it's also external. So from the cloud's standpoint, the cloud could be like, well, what do you mean? You're inside of me. Yeah, it's the same thing. When you start thinking quantumly, it just depends on which point of view you want to take. So if you're going to externalize, then you can put an orb of energy in the cloud and turn it into like a miniature invisible sun with a repelling pattern to disperse the moisture, or you can connect and gain a solid connection feeling the cloud within your own very being, within your body, within your mind, and begin to clear that pattern from within yourself, and the cloud, the external cloud, will begin to respond to that and disappear as well. Because quantum understanding, once again, is that, that the observation is what creates the reality. So once you begin to hook into the exterior world with five sense data, you gain a lot more power as an observer slash creator of reality. All of these things, the feats that we do, I want to state again that the feelings are the chief fruit in all of it. Just being able to go out on a partially sunny, partially cloudy day and feel the variance in all of that structure is magnificent beyond belief. And, I do get comments every once in a while on my video where I make like 5 or 6 of them disappear in a row, and they're like, oh, these little clouds, they just disappear on their own. And I don't respond to people like that anymore. They're just not worth my time. But I would state the obvious. Well, I guess I just got really lucky and picked the right 5 and in the proper order. I mean, come on. And we've got countless numbers of students that are starting to expand into other things. We had a guy recently, he had a massive cloud that he gets rid of in like 3 minutes. And then we had another guy that points out like 4 individual clouds and compresses them all together into one big cloud. So, with what I've found with highly skeptical people is I don't deal with them whatsoever. I'm not even willing to let them into my emotional field or even waste one word, much less an entire sentence debating with them. The world is brimming full of people that already have an understanding of, either from a scientific point of view of observer creating reality by pure mathematics that we have, or coming up through the spiritual and the metaphysical channels. The world is brimming also with people that have already experienced miraculous things that break the boundaries of what we currently think is possible. So there's enough people that are willing to break the mold. There's enough people that believe in the possibility. I spend my time and energy and effort with those. I don't waste any effort with skeptical people. Though I am willing to provide for people on a reasonable basis. I'll go out of my way somewhat to provide demonstrations that can show a reasonable, logical person that if they're open-minded, that I have a conscious presence past my body. But if a person's going to, if I can tell that they even have that desire to be skeptical and disprove it, I've got absolutely zero interest in people like that.
Well, there are a lot of people in the world who are coming into extraordinary abilities, such as the both of you and your students. and there are yet a lot of others who are misleading people. So how do you go
Yeah.
about evaluating what is real and what is not? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I can tell right away because, and so can Michael. And Michael, I'll let you go in just a minute here. But
Sure.
what we do, what we provide is we don't ask for any money right up. We have a 7-day free trial to our course. You know, come in and check it out. You know, and if you like what you see, stay. If you don't, leave. And then after that, we don't charge like $1,000 for the course, no money back guarantee. It's $29 per month. So how many people would consistently pay $29 per month for something they're not getting results on? Not very many people. So that's how we handle that whole element. Is very, it's zero risk. You know. So we just invite people. Look, our demonstration pretty damn convincing. They're convincing enough to at least do a free trial to the course, and then, you know, get a good grip at what we're looking at. But as far as how do I tell with other people, well, if they don't demonstrate, then they're not real. If they're not willing to offer demonstrations and they've got some hish-hash story about how it's not allowed by the Galactic Council, or you know, there's or it's against the rules. I mean, I've never, you know, it's with a lot of these people, though, Ethan, I do believe that they've tapped genuine abilities, but there is an extreme difference between something you have done and something that you can do. Because tons and tons and tons of people have extreme experiences, but then the next day cannot repeat them. And then these people feel qualified to teach others. And then they come up with a very clever and crafty story as to why they're not allowed to demonstrate. And I see a lot of that. So I'm not saying that they're complete deceivers or anything, but if they're not willing to demonstrate, you can bet your left hand that they do not have those abilities with any consistency, because well, they would just be willing to demonstrate. I mean, it's
Yeah.
who would study from a science teacher whose theories don't pan out? Who would study mathematics from somebody whose formulas don't add up? Who would study music from somebody that can't sing or play the piano? You know, it's just logic.
Exactly. Uh, and that's exactly what I was going to say. It's the results from the teachers that you have to look at. Um, if there's nothing out there that they can show you and provide to you, and there would be no hook, no reason uh, to basically delve into your time and effort, because, you know, being as busy as we all are, I'm telling you what, if a person can't show me something, why would I even waste that bit of time with them? I could not imagine going into like a martial arts studio, walking up to a teacher and saying, okay, I would like to learn your course now. Show me what you got, you know? And they actually literally look at you and say, well, I'm not allowed to do that. Well, how do you expected to learn? Oh, I'm not going to do that because again, it's egoic or it's this and that. It's like there's no way that a person can learn something from another person if they have nothing there to teach. So it's all in the results, and if the person's not willing to at least show a little bit of something, give some sort of a demonstration of what they can do, then you're definitely wasting your time.
Have you both considered what would happen if you trained several thousand people or more in developing these abilities, and everyone is out there making clouds disappear and changing the weather and so on?
Uh-huh.
Is this a good idea for people to have these abilities without the proper higher consciousness? What I mean essentially is,
Beautiful.
you know, yeah, we live in a world where ego is dominant in people as a whole, and consciousness is still very low in the masses. So if people make decisions for their own benefit and don't consider the needs of others or the world, you know, we live in a world where now we have governments and leaders who make decisions that negatively impact the lives of everyone for their own benefit. One example specifically that might relate a little bit to weather is chemtrails, which are being used partly to influence weather and for other reasons. But what happens if we have a world full of people who have these abilities, but not the corresponding high consciousness to use them in a more wise and enlightened way?
I'm
Let me
glad
go
you asked.
first on this one, Michael, if you don't mind. I'll be brief. Um, we will finally begin to experience harmony. Everybody has to know this no matter what, because everybody's doing it already, but on a completely unconscious level. Every single human there is affects the weather with their thoughts, their moods, their emotions. They affect the geometrical patterns. They affect the pressure in the earth. They affect volcanoes. They affect earthquakes. They affect every single person already has an unconscious effect on everything. All we're doing is bringing it to the conscious level. So what's going to happen is that it's going to be in people's faces, and they're going to be forced to understand that the human has a connection to the exterior world, that the world is an extension of their very being. And by then, human consciousness is finally going to see, look, we have no choice but to take responsibility, to understand the mechanics of this, and to really get it all done. For every 10 negative people, there's 100 positive people. Humanity is good people. So if you offer this type of training, you'll get some bad eggs here and there, but your standard person is a good person. You know, the main problems we have with this world is not ill-gotten philosophy. It's not bad people that hate on each other and have low morals and are egoic. It's a few high people with very crappy system of morals, exercising a system of dominance and control. Your average human is a good person, so I really see no danger whatsoever. And also want to say that higher consciousness that you're talking about is a byproduct of all of this, because when a person's switches get turned on, if they start operating in what you could call dark magic, or using these abilities for self-gain through harming others, they end up harming themselves, and they learn their own lessons very quickly, because when you're using energy to get things done, it's going to slap you in the face due to the law of projection, the law of attraction. You know, what you put out is what comes back. So that's all I have to say on it. You go ahead, Michael.
Now, me, I'm actually, especially when it comes to upper levels of knowledge, I'm a lot more choosy in who I delve stuff out to.
Well, I agree there too. But he talked about making clouds disappear.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I made the distinction between higher knowledge. But yeah, I had like I said, my first experience with an apprentice was actually, to be quite honest, it was still a wonderful, great experience. I learned a lot. He learned a lot. And, you know, from what I hear, he's gone on and has done wonderful things. But for a good period, he did use some of the knowledge for negative things. Now, Mike was extremely correct when he said that if you do end up using some of this stuff for negativity, believe me, you're going to get crushed by it. The universe is very good at handing out butt whippings when it needs to. And so while I was teaching this particular guy, I'm not going to go into too many details, but I can say that he started, he picked up where I left off in my 20s. He realized that he could enter people's minds and control their minds, and he started benefiting from it. He was controlling people's minds to the point where he was able to get whatever he wanted from people, how he wanted. And I had warned him against this. And I had warned him against it several times. And finally, what ended up happening, he did take advantage of a lot of people, but in the end, he got stripped of everything he ever had. Number one, his ability to move energy and his ability to infect people's minds was taken away. The universe did that very promptly. Number two, I took my energy knowledge away from him as well, so the things that worked before for him wouldn't work for him again. Then, number three, he lost his job. Number four, he was on unemployment. Unemployment took out every single bit of money after he lost his job. Number five, all of his students that he was working with turned their back on him and left him in the dirt, so he didn't have anyone here taking care of him. The only thing that ended up happening, well, not the only thing that he could end up doing after all of this had transpired, because even more stuff hit him. I'm just not going into detail with all of it, but he ended up having to be flown out of here by his sister. He had to call up his sister, ask for money, and he ended up moving back to LA because there was nothing here for him to take advantage of anymore. And so, the universe, when it comes to energy, and if you use upper realms of knowledge for your own personal gain and it is stepping on people's heads, it will come back. Now, the other thing is like you asked, you said, what happens if a mass amount of people are doing this and they're all doing it for self-personal gain? Well, that in itself will cause all sorts of, like Mike said, we're doing it on unconscious levels as it is. So when you become more honed and you're still trying to do those sort of things, then the pressure gets worse and worse from the universe. The universe starts to compile everything on you exponentially. The more you continue to try to use the knowledge for negative purposes, the more the negativity will find you. And so, like Mike said, law of attraction, to me, it's a fancy word, just saying karma or whatever, but that is what will occur. I've seen it happen, and that is one of the very reasons why, even, like I said, I myself stopped in my 20s. I had enough experiences at that point to realize that I was going in the wrong direction. Now, there are some people who, no matter what, they are just negatively prone because that is what they have chosen. But I can say that the upper realms of knowledge can't even be wielded by them anyway. There's certain things that can be, but most of the upper realms of knowledge, even if they try to use it, it won't get them very far. But I am very careful on who I approach or who approaches me, and then I weed them out carefully as to whether they should be on that particular path or not. So as a teacher, I take that responsibility.
What is the practical purpose of people developing these abilities in the long run? Where do you see it going? I mean, so if everybody can make clouds disappear or make straws move in a jar, what is the use of that in the bigger society or in our long-term life experience?
Well, like I said, it's not about the abilities. It's about the feelings. We live to feel. I mean, that's entirely what we live for. In the modern life, even still, we live to feel. We chase facts within our life in order to feel better about ourselves, about the world we live in, to feel amplified emotional states. We chase the next job. We chase the next promotion, chase the next computer, the next iPhone, the next car, the next sexual partner, the next chemical intoxication. Obviously, we live entirely to feel. So when you tune into energy, you gain amplified feelings and pleasures beyond the imagination of what you can even achieve off of the best drugs, or you get highs that are greater than a dream job promotion. Being connected in this way is a constant miracle. It turns every single moment of your life into a rich and vibrant spiritual experience. After just a few months, like 3 to 6 months of training in this, your sensations become primarily electromagnetic. So we do feel the physical body, but it's like an overlap to us. The primary of what we feel is the soul presence, an electromagnetic, fastly vibrating, fluctuating presence interconnected to our breath and our heartbeat. So we're breathing in soul. Our breath fills the room that we're in, and when we inhale, we feel molecular and magnetic movement and frictions that are more amazing than a standard human caressing the skin of a lover. And this is just from taking a breath. Each beat of the heart is almost like an orgasm in the chest area, sending us out many feet past our body in a toroidal field pattern. Merging with sunlight is more miraculous. It's so hard to describe the beauty of these things, but sunlight is a very rich, thick and fastly vibrating magnetic, and when you merge with it, you gain a sense of touch connection that, words fail. I've already used the words caressing the skin of a lover, but it's 10 times more than even that. It's just beautiful beyond imagination to feel, and it brings you into a peace and a presence. It gives you control over your body. You gain a conscious control over the major glands in your endocrine system, so you can balance your hormonal output, so you're always feeling good, vibrant, healthy. Disease begins to go away. You tend not to get sick. The chances of you having a major illness or an accident are pretty much eliminated because you're in a conscious control of your reality and you understand the principles of creation and everything. The abilities themselves at this stage in our development, yeah, they're really not of a practical value to society. Being able to move a straw inside of a container or make clouds disappear, though the weather alterations could definitely prove to be valuable because we can pull in rain to an area that has drought. Not that this is new technology. Native Americans have been doing this for a long time. We just came in and destroyed them because we thought they were superstitious fools. But healing of other people is of a definite and immediate value. So apart from the vast sensual connection and magnificent amplitude to the quality of life experience on a day-to-day basis, by an understanding and a research of this and more of us being able to unite as one, we're going to increase our level of abilities into the type of extreme stuff that would build upon an advanced society. But even then, I wouldn't care if we could walk on water right now. Walking on water would not be nearly as amazing as connecting to your breath and heartbeat and feeling the magnetic vibration of the sun stream through you, merging your consciousness on that particle stream, going many feet out past your body and being at one with the intelligence of the sun. That would feel a lot better than walking on water or flying through the air. So there's endless value, in what we do, and many doorways open for the future once science merges with this and begins to understand how to use technology to amplify this power, and once enough humans come together as one, because there is a doubling effect for every soul that is consciously overlapped with another soul. The amount of force, both magnetic and electrical, has a doubling effect for each one. So if there's 2, it's times 2. If there's 3, it's times 4. If there's 4, it's times 8. So it gets to be a very significant level of energy. It's just like 2 flames from a lighter. If you put them together, they become 1 flame. Well, souls are just like that. And so there is some amazing stuff we're going to be able to do in the future, but the principle behind all of this is increasing the day-to-day quality of life by having the intimate connection through the universal electromagnetic energy, feeling all life as an extension of your being.
Okay. I can tell you for 100% fact, and I've had at least, well, quite a few witnesses, but I've also, videoed it. Myself, I have brought thunderstorms and rain here on several occasions when Indiana was going through severe droughts. At least on 5 or 6 other times, tornadoes were coming right through the center, getting ready to come right through the center of town and disperse them within seconds. Okay? And I don't mean like, go out there and sit and meditate and yada, yada, blah, blah. I'm talking within seconds, shutting the thing off. Okay, so you can be a very big benefactor to your environment. Okay, by merely spreading knowledge and consciousness, that is being a benefactor to your environment because, again, you're trying to connect them into the unity consciousness. And once this happens, people tend to do what is right as opposed to what is self-oriented. So there's many different ways that you can be a benefactor. And, we could take away the idea of having abilities whatsoever and just going out there and doing the right thing. I can tell you this. It was last week. It was me and 2 of my other students. And let's take away from the idea of abilities for a minute. I had taught them over the past couple of years to master their own minds, to master themselves, master their fears. We literally had a situation happen last week where a man hit 2 other men at 60 miles per hour. They were riding on the back of a scooter, and this other guy, it was a hit-and-run shot. He hit him. One of them flew over the handlebars of the scooter, and then the guy re-ran over the guy on accident, okay? And so the situation was really ugly, and all 3 of us, as opposed to sit and question each other, are training immediately kicked in. Okay, we're not EMTs, but I can tell you this. Number one, we went there and I was tending to both of the victims while Daniel and Kyle were on either end of me, blocking traffic from coming in, because at that point it was nighttime, it was raining, we're all wearing dark clothes, so that became quite the task. Okay, so these things can, your training in self-mastery can extend both to the metaphysical and to the physical, okay? Without us having done what we did, both of those men would have been run over multiple times after that. And as it turns out, because we did do what we did, they ended up going to the hospital. One of them is still in critical condition. He has a broken neck and a broken spine, 3 broken ribs, and he lost all his teeth. But the other guy actually walked away. And the biggest aspect of that was hearing their mother and the fiance of one of the people say, "Thank you. Thank you so much. If you hadn't been there, they'd be dead. You acted as an angel that day." Well, that's the whole point, is that people, once they learn to control and master their own minds, not only are they going to be able to do things with their abilities, but they're going to have confidence in themselves to be able to stand up, and when catastrophes and situations occur, they can solve it as opposed to freak out.
You're painting a very positive outlook for the future as people do come into these abilities and develop them. So where do you see the future of the world going? I mean, things are pretty intense and chaotic right now in the mainstream. Obviously, there's this undercurrent of awakening that's occurring with a small group of people, obviously, compared to the mainstream. So do you believe that we've crossed the point of no return toward a future where we will have a more enlightened world, or have we not quite made it that far yet?
Yes, we have, but there's no such thing as the future. It's a vast range of probability and possibility. Anything can be screwed up. We have to do the work, but I say that we've crossed that threshold because there are enough of us that take a joy and a delight in doing the work, helping others, and there's enough that are self-motivated to work on their own selves. So the work still has to be done. No future is going to, obviously write itself. But where I see us going, I don't like to put a time frame on it, but I do believe that in the near future that it's going to be common knowledge that consciousness is electromagnetic, not physical based, that it's consciousness that's been providing thoughts through the brain, and the brain is little more than a storage computer, that consciousness is mobile, being electromagnetic, and that since the world, everything has a electromagnetic frequency, everybody's just going to know through demonstration and through logical understanding that they are one with the world and one with each other. This is going to completely change the nature of all mankind for a very simple reason. Because right now, our nature is one of separation. They say it's an illusion, but realities are illusions. So separation is a reality until it changes. So every human is separate from the external world because they're not connected to it. They don't feel it as being a part of themselves. They're separate from each other because this is my body and that's yours. Well, from our standpoint, from a developed energy master, we can project our consciousness out of our body and into the body of somebody else. Vice versa, they can come in and share our body. It begins to give a sense of true oneness. So we're acting, everything that we're doing is coming from a nature of separation. Now, if the common knowledge changes to one of unity, knowing through direct experience, not just reading it in a book, but by experiencing it daily, that the world is an extension of yourself, that we are overlapped electromagnetically with each other and with everyone else. Now our nature changes to one of unity consciousness, and that's going to change immediately how we see each other. War would just be stupid because you feel other people's emotions and pain as a part of yourself. So why would you even consider harming another person? Environmental issues would cease because we would know that this is the only physical world we have, that it's an extension of our very body, and that as we abuse the planet, we're making our own selves sick. The whole nature of science would change because they'd be studying vibration, frequency, harmonics, applied quantum theory. They'd be studying all of this phenomena. Art would change, math would change. There's not one major function of society that would not completely turn around and change. And where we go from there, I don't really even want to go there because I don't really want to be a storyteller, but I do believe in the infinite range of possibility. What I do know for sure that we're creating is the common knowledge of the overlap of consciousness through the electromagnetic spectrum and the inherent unity of all things.
So do you expect, I know you didn't want to set a time frame to this, but I imagine you're anticipating a lot of these things happening in your lifetime.
Yes, in my lifetime. I'm thinking it's going to be the next generation or the one after that that sees it through to completion. Now, keep in mind, I'm also optimistic. There's people talking about this big event, going to happen in the next 10 years. Sure, but I'm also grounded and practical too. So logically, I'm prepared for it to take to be the generation after us or the one even after that before it's common knowledge. But I leave room open for possibility that there could just be a crazy snowball effect that happens and a great reworking of everything in a very short time. But the thing that I do know for sure that we've got the ball rolling on is that within a generation or two that life as we know it will be completely different.
So tell me more about your school. What exactly do you teach your students, or just describe the curriculum a little bit, and what is really anything other than what you've already shared, anything else you can tell me about the mission or purpose of the education itself?
Okay, well, the mission of the school is to provide a logical platform of a grounded understanding. Our slogan is demystifying ascension. So we're all about taking out the ancient mysticism that's been intertwined with all of these things, all of the dogmas that have been placed up, all the barriers of fear that have been placed around it, and providing a modern metaphysical and scientific and even medical physical understanding as to how all of this works, so that it's a very practical way for a person to experience unity consciousness and multidimensional reality. We have 3 levels to our course. In the awakening level, we have 2 primary goals, and that is to get a person expanded into the electromagnetic spectrum, and the way you do that is by doing a series of focus exercises where you consciously run an amplified energy through your nerve fiber system by doing a series of focus exercises, and this causes your nerve fibers to grow in size, pretty much for the same reason as your muscles grow when you work them out. And so your sensory nerves get bigger and your motor nerves get bigger. So the strength of the electromagnetic field that you conduct increases and your ability to perceive it increases. Well, somewhere with everybody it's different. Sometimes it's within 1 month, but usually within 3 to 6 months, going through a series of variant sensations, a person achieves a magnetic fluctual presence interpretation within their body at all times. So and I mean the whole body. I mean, a person they can feel it in their chest at first, and then their head, so on and so forth. But after 3 to 6 months, you end up with a conscious bubble of electromagnetic presence all around and inside of your body, shifting and flowing, and perfectly connected with your breath and the heartbeat. And like I said, that's done through a series of focus exercises. The other part of it is to rekindle the multidimensionality of consciousness. So the idea being that every night that we go to sleep, our souls do indeed leave the body and travel many different dimensions of experience, but we're currently, for the most part, incapable of remembering them due to the variance in vibrational and structural difference that the brain has versus the mind. So ourself as we know ourselves in the brain is completely different than ourselves as we know ourselves in the electromagnetic spectrum in the spirit body. So we teach a series of exercises to begin to bridge that gap. Or if you want to use an old mystical term, that's piercing the veil. What the veil is, as I've already said, it's the vibrational and structural variance between the brain and the soul. Nothing more, nothing less. As you begin to bridge that gap, the two become more and more similar so that more data can be streamed. So we teach a series through the course of getting people at different levels of multidimensional experience. And the first one is how to train the consciousness to wake up inside of parallel realities, or what you could call lucid dreaming. Though there's, a lot more to it than that. I don't really like the term dream, but we prepare everybody's consciousness to begin bridging these multidimensional connections that they have. And like I said, everybody does it, but if the brain is unable to record the data from the experience, then it's as though the experience never happened, because when you, we already know we have to fall asleep to leave our body. Or when we put this body to sleep to go to another dimension, we pass out. We lose consciousness because of our consciousness has to pass through that veil, that vibrational variance. Well, the same thing is true when we come back to our body. That part of ourself gets knocked out. It loses consciousness as it makes the transition. So we smooth out that gap, which gives not only a great rest and respite every night. I mean, you get to be in lighter realms, in a spirit body that's far less limited. You can levitate and fly, experience parallel realities that are amazing. I mean, that's just a part of it, though. But by connecting all these different levels, you begin to get a very solid, higher guidance. So information can come through from lighter frequencies of vibration that can reconnect you to your soul family, and give you a good solid connection to higher guidance. So intuition ramps up, and clairvoyance is another part of what we teach, the ability to see energy. And so the awakening course is all about rekindling these basic connections that make all of the abilities possible. The next step is the advanced course, where you work on building the level of mass that you have, the level of soul mass that you contain, which is the amount of magnetism that you have, as well as the electrical and vibrational properties of your soul. And we begin to teach basic telekinesis, and then we offer a path to mastery class for people that want to go all the way with this and get their abilities really honed up to the point where they can publicly demonstrate and publicly teach other people, and begin spreading the word themselves.
Have you found that all of your students have been able to achieve the same results, or is there some limitation from person to person that some people have a better tendency toward developing these abilities than others?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've seen with every single student that applies themselves, they all get results. I have not had one single student yet that upon keeping it up said, well, I just can't get it, so I'm out of here. Now, we do have specialties when it comes to energy, just like we all have specialties from within the physical body. Some of us do certain things better than others do. Well, what we're training people in is mastery of the electromagnetic body, or the soul body. And we all have specialties when it comes to that. So some people have an extremely easy time with clairvoyance. They can see energy just right away. They get that no problem. They can lucid dream every single night. They have 5 to 10 out-of-body experiences every single night. But then when it comes to telekinesis, they couldn't move a straw to save their life. Now, some people come along and they can move that straw. They can make those clouds disappear like it's nobody's business. They can change the wind on a dime, but they cannot, for the life of them, project out of their body. So everybody can perform all of the abilities, but we definitely specialize in certain areas. And we just sort of complement each other in that way. And we're all seeking to develop all of the areas because they're all necessary and important. But We definitely find that the students have specialties and they lean towards certain areas, but anybody can do this stuff. It's very basic. The course material that we teach is not complicated. It's based on feeling and intuition and simple logic. There's nothing complicated in all of it. It just takes a few mental barriers to be broken through an understanding, and then a little bit of daily dedication, and you're going to get the results. And one success leads into another one, because all the lessons are based on the same thing, which is electromagnetic perception past the range of the five senses.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michael, for taking the time to speak with me today. Can you tell us where people can get in touch with you and get involved in your school or any of your other work?
Yeah, absolutely. We teach online primarily, though we do offer a few meetups a year for the students. But to check us out, go to avatarenergymaster.com or avatarenergymastery.com. Both of those lead to the same place. And go ahead and check out our demonstrations. We got lots of demonstrations from the teachers, and we've also got lots of student demonstrations posted, like over 50 so far, and lots of other media appearances and interviews that we've done. And I'd like to invite you all to give the 7-day free trial a shot. You've got absolutely nothing to lose, and even if you only decide to stay for the 7-day free trial, you're going to learn some extremely valuable information. And definitely no offense taken if that's all you feel like doing at the moment. But I think everybody owes it to themselves to at least check it out and give it a try. And Ethan, I really want to thank you for this. You conducted a very professional interview and asked some really good questions, and grateful that you had me on today.
Oh, thank you. It's been my pleasure as well. And we're planning some kind of a demonstration here in person with an audience down the line, so we're looking forward to that in the near future, and we'll get that out to everybody as well. And so I'm looking forward to finally meeting you in person in the next several months, hopefully.
Oh yeah.
But thank you again, and we'll talk real soon.
All right, brother.
Thank you.